Opera Philadelphia presents its latest award-winning world premiere, Denny's and Katya, part of Festival O19. The latest, from Philip Venables and Ted Hoffman, the duo behind the renowned 448 Psychosis, Denny's and Katya is based on a real-life tragedy that played out live on social media. This visceral production examines the vast public response to the events surrounding the violent deaths of two teenage runaways and exploring what makes us click in our age of conspiracy theories, fake news, and 24/7 digital connection. Denny's and Katya at Festival O19, September 18th through 29th in Philadelphia. Tickets at operaphila.org.
In part 2 of our coverage, Chuck Sachs talks with creator-performer Joseph Keckler and director-dramaturge Elizabeth Gimbel about their new work, Let Me Die, which is receiving its world premiere at O19 Festival. And that is followed with an interview with Elizabeth Braden, Opera Philadelphia's chorus master. This is Chuck Sachs for Indie Opera Podcast, and I'll be chatting with creator Joseph Keckler about the world premiere production of Let Me Die. Hello, Joseph.
Hello, Chuck.
Where is Let Me Die receiving its premiere?
It's going to be at the Fringe Arts Theater in Philadelphia, co-presented by Fringe Arts and Opera Philadelphia.
And when is it running?
September 21st to September 28th.
That is
8 p.m. every day.
Yep, 8 p.m. And so now, this is not the first piece you've been working on with your director-dramaturge, Elizabeth Gimbel, who couldn't be with us yet. I know, what was the first piece? Was it Train with No Midnight?
No, so Train with No Midnight went up in January, and that was actually kind of us coming back together for something in performance. She worked on my book, which came out in the interim, but the first thing we did together was about a decade ago, and two pieces, a piece called Cat Lady and a piece called Human Jukebox. And Cat Lady was just a text piece about my mother and her relationship as a kind of cat artist, as a director of a theater where cats are the actors.
Okay.
Or a fictionalized version of my mother, I should say. My mother would want me to say, and. And Human Jukebox was also a kind of a more impressionistic piece about my mother, which was longer and a series of vignettes. And it had premiered in Dublin. I don't remember if it premiered in Dublin or at La Mama here in New York.
But one of those.
It went both places. Yeah.
Cool. And so then after not working for a while, then you came back and did Train with No Midnight.
Yeah, I guess that I had a couple other pieces that Elizabeth didn't work on, and then we worked together on the book, which came out in 2017.
So was the development process for Let Me Die different than Train with No Midnight? What is your process, and your process by yourself or your process with your dramaturge?
Well, and I should say, and Train with No Midnight also had a dramaturg, Erica Rundle. And so, Elizabeth was also doing dramaturge, what you could call, I think Erica was doing kind of more, it was more conceptual. She's a scholar, a theater scholar, and, and Elizabeth calls herself a creative technician. So, I would say Elizabeth's more geared towards, on the page, it's editing. It's like, expand that this thought isn't, you need to push this farther, this is unnecessary, move this around.
What were you meaning with this? Kind of like things like that.
And a lot about pace, too, and just, this is, we were pulling from different sources for Train on the Midnight, and also this other essay I wrote, and, she pulled a bunch from that, said this could work on stage, this can work on stage, this isn't theatrical.
So then it went deeper even now with Let Me Die, because...
Well, and the process, so Elizabeth and I have been working together on it, but, also, well, today we're going to look at the script for the first part, and She's going to give me feedback on that. But we're still very much in process. So, and it's something that I've been working on by myself for a while, or and with other people too.
And
like Matthew, my musical collaborator. So.
Right. What exactly is Let Me Die about? I mean, and where did this idea for the work come from?
So the idea is that, it's also that it's a collage of operatic death scenes. So unlike, most of my stuff, I write music and I write the text, and for this I am writing music and I am writing text, but the sort of centerpiece of it is just a collage of little operatic death moments. So a death moment from Aida, a death moment from La Boheme, a death moment from Parsifal, a death moment from Medea, and they have been woven together.
I remember reading you talked about the Monteverdi aria Lasciatemi morire.
Yeah,
which is one of the few only remaining sections from his Ariadne of Naxos.
That's right.
Opera.
Yeah, that's right. It's basically, and it's also something that they give you when you start out singing. A lot of times,
yes,
it's one of these kind of beginner arias. But I found it amusing that so to begin to learn to sing, you get this aria that's an imploration for death. Please let me die, and I was attracted to the sort of conceptual rhyming or the poetic way in which Ariana in the aria has been abandoned, left on Naxos, the Isle of Naxos, and so she's alone and she's asking for death, and then she's doubly stranded because the aria has survived its own context. So it's kind of like a little island. It's kind of like Ariadne. It's so the double stranding is what I was attracted to, and I thought, well, what if from every opera the rest was lost, but the death remained?
So probably you're also doing Dido from Dido and Aeneas.
Well, yes, yeah. I thought, well, should we? It's kind of like that's sort of like the, the stairway to heaven of opera deaths. But so I thought maybe we shouldn't do that. But at the same time, it's good. So
I mean, it's one of my favorite, and actually my favorite version is East Village Light Opera's version of it, which is very world beat fusion. Mm-hmm. It's so wild. It's just like. It turns it into something sounding like Donna Summer at points.
Right.
That whole
and there's a bunch of other bits from Dido and Aeneas in there too. That was actually the first opera I ever listened to, and so I just love that opera. There's lots of stuff in there.
So I think there's a lot of other artistic organizations and artists that have helped you on your way during developing this piece. Who were they, and how did some of them help?
Well, and you'll see my tote. Let's turn the other way now. But I have a Baryshnikov Art Center tote bag, and so I had a month there in April, which was spent with my collaborator Matthew Dean Marsh, just really going through all these opera scores and saying, okay, how many? And we made a spreadsheet, okay, of all the operas, who dies, how do they die, what page is it on, what does it sound like, do we like it, what measures do we like, and that helped. That was a good North Star in a world of chaos. So that was a really helpful point of the process just recently, and before that also I worked on it at the Orchard Project, which is a kind of a theater, a festive kind of theater residency up in Saratoga Springs, New York, and that was a year ago, and it's more exploratory. I went up with a soprano friend, Megan Nielsen, and Elizabeth, and played around with things. And prior to that, I had also, this piece for some, not in a way, it's it's challenging in ways that other things I've done haven't been. I hope it works. And it's been very labor intensive, just to the research component of it. And I don't think I'm actually, although I read a lot and I'm interested in ideas, this type of just the volume of going through the operas, the cataloging and stuff is something it's been harder for me to do than I would have imagined. So the first residency, I also had a wit artist residency at the University of Michigan, and that's where I started the project. And then I got Creative Capital support for the project too. And Creative Capital is very holistic in its support, so that's really supported me as an artist on all fronts. But it officially is for this project, and it effectively is for this project.
And so, after like this most recent one, then what does Matthew sit down and then start charting everything out and shoving it together into a kind of starting of a score? So
it's the thing consists. There are some of my own compositions, and usually I chart those, and then work with musicians to develop other lines and stuff. But we have just a very Frankenstein-y score with my Sharpie marks crossing things out and arrows and some sort of unwieldy repeat signs puncturing the page. But so Matthew and I really kind of got into a headspace and constructed it together. And Matthew did want to put everything into Sibelius and rework it, but we would need a whole other month to do that. And now he's going to Abu Dhabi and all sorts of stuff. He's not playing for the show.
Oh, wow, okay.
He was part of the formation, but he's not going to be in this performance.
Just Abu Dhabi. Just a little place.
No, just a quick...
Yes. No, yeah, it's I do know, I mean, I can imagine how much music and clips and everything, how long that would take to stick into Sibelius. Because I completed my new 110-page score. And it was like,
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
it would be laborious.
But after, so that it can tour.
Yeah, I mean, the score, I kind of actually like it's collage based, and I actually kind of like it visually as a collage, with all in all its chaos. So I don't know if the other singers involved will share my feelings, but
yeah, I've been there too when I'm like reorchestrating things and I don't have time to write it out. So it's like copying pages and cut and pasting and taking pieces from other instruments to give them to other instruments in their same clef to fulfill and make something sound a lot more fuller when I have like 5 instruments as opposed to 20. So I've been there.
Right.
And there is a point though where it's like, okay, we need to make this as clear as we can so that everyone ends up in the same place.
True. Very true.
So what kind of audience do you wish this piece will attract?
Well, I think that's, for my material, it's an easier answer, which is, I think my work pulls from different corners. So I'm able to pull, some of an art audience, some of an opera audience, some of a more non-classical music audience, comedy audience, and theater. So that's really pulling. It's a cross section.
And is there a message that you hope that the audience will take away with them? Is it?
Well, and I was going to say, and for this, I think we're using a kind of avant-garde theater treatment of this classical work. So I think there are elements of devised theater. So I'm hoping that the fringe arts audience, will hook into a lot of these strategies, and then the classical audience, will hopefully be interested in the music and its origins, and they'll get other references and stuff. And I'm hoping that it's accessibility, I think, can kind of have a sort of strange sentimental cloud around it as a word and an idea. But I do hope that there are lots of points of entry for people who are opera people.
So I know Train with No Midnight, you had a band.
Right.
What is the instrumentation for this show?
This is going to be very, very pared down, so it's just piano and violin.
Okay.
And then 3 singers, aside from myself.
And is there a dancer?
And there's also an actress and dancer who's a presence in the piece, I will say.
Okay.
Yeah. His name's Saori Tsukada, who's,
So that means you're going to actually probably be singing some duets and trios, maybe even?
There will be, there are some choral things that'll be sung. I mean, there's the Aida duet at the end when they're buried, when they're entombed alive, but singing this sublime thing. That'll be in there.
Entombed, yes,
that's right. And there are other moments. It's a lot of
And where did the singers come from? Are they people that have been around you, or people who suggested to you?
I didn't know any of them previously, so they're all really interesting people who each have kind of broad and particular interests.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what resonated for me. So the 3 of them, there's Veronica Chapman-Smith, and she sings with Opera Philadelphia a lot, certain roles and certain choral things, and is a soloist other places. She also works with a cabaret troupe in Philadelphia called the Bearded Ladies.
Oh,
and
yes.
So she's very game for different relationships with the audience and all this stuff. And she's got a beautiful and her voice is actually it can be very big. We were just working on something, and so she's got this gorgeous soprano voice. There's a woman named Natalie Levin, and she is is a mezzo, had studied under Mignon Dunn, and was in some sort of operatic trajectory, and then somewhere along the way became also an astrologer and a yoga instructor.
Okay.
And she sings, German lieder and arias to her yoga class as they're in Savasana. So there's she has
right up your...
That's right up my alley.
Yes.
And she gives astrological advice on the internet and everything, and so she's so I thought also this performance is very ritualistic. It's a kind of ceremonial thing of taking these deaths, and we're sort of doing a kind of ceremony of death. So she very much has that orientation already. And then there's also Darius Elmore, who is a countertenor, and but also kind of involved in fashion and things, and has a gorgeous, delicate voice, and and everybody's really good.
So you've got this great mix of from Bearded Ladies area, astrologist, spiritualist, and then you have a kind of fashion designer in the mix, sort of.
Yeah, I don't know if he designs, but he may. So everybody has these. Everybody has a very self-definition. It's not like sometimes in the worlds of theater and in the worlds of classical music, people want to empty themselves of personality to become vessels, to become characters, and sometimes people are. There's a homogenizing effect that can go on in the entertainment world.
Yes.
And I would say that's not going on here.
That's my kind of people.
Yeah.
That is absolutely my kind of people.
And everybody's a really, good singer, too, which is important.
Now, how large is that space? Because I've never been to Fringe Arts in Philly.
Well, it's kind of huge. The stage isn't that deep, but it's really wide and really high ceilings, and has these. I mean, they gave me I keep forgetting the actual.
That's okay, but it sounds larger than I would think.
It's only 200 and some seats.
That's still decent.
With a really steep rake.
So now it's sounding kind of like brick. that feel that, you know, Brick has, and Bam Fisher can have that kind of rake.
Does it, or like, you know, New York Live Arts or something?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I can show you the space. It's like, there's...
Ooh, and those three big glass...
Three giant windows. Yeah, so and usually theater groups don't use the windows. They
So
put
it kind of looks a bit like a loft space in a sense.
Yeah, it's an old industrial space, and we're, you know, I'm choosing to expose the architecture, and you expose the windows, even though it's sort of a dangerous move.
So, are there thoughts for you to then tour this work after you're done there?
Yes, you know, I think, but...
Because why should just Philadelphia and the Eastern Seaboard have a chance?
Yeah, I think, you know, so yeah, I think there's interest in touring, you know, but I think honestly too, there are all these, I mean, Train with No Midnight will tour, and I feel like there are all these presenters kind of circling around to think, do we want Let Me Die or Train with No Midnight or something, which I didn't realize. I wouldn't have timed things that way had I realized. That's right. It's buy one, get one, 50% off.
Act 1, Train with No Midnight. Act 2, Let Me Die.
Yeah. I think that would be just the
with a pre-curtain, Cat Lady.
Right, exactly.
Well, I am looking forward to seeing this in its full production mode, and this has been great. I'm glad to talk with you again.
Glad to talk with you.
So, continuing, Elizabeth Gimbel, the director and dramaturge of Let Me Die, has joined us. No thanks to the MTA subway system.
It's so nice to be here. Thanks for having us, Chuck.
I'm so glad. I'm happy, as I said, with Joseph and you to get this done much earlier than I usually do. And so we can have some time to figure out. So can we talk about some of the process in developing and then eventually in directing this as a stage work?
Yeah, process in developing. Let's see. Well, I mean, first and foremost, Joseph and I are friends, and we've just known each other for a long time and enjoy each other's company. So I feel like our work is just kind of an extension of friendship in a certain way. And as far as the nuts and bolts of it, it's really very practical. You know, it's very just kind of reading through the script and moving a little furniture around, seeing what's working, what needs to be added or subtracted, and then
clarified.
And then, you know, popping it up on that old stage there.
Now you started out as an actor. When did you move into being a director or a dramaturge?
Yeah, I majored in theater in college and did a bunch of kind of musical theater as a kid, as a performer. And then I started directing out of school with some smaller theaters who were really working with community-based organizations helping to get people's stories up on the stage. And then I have a very divergent storyline. I directed Joseph's first two solo shows.
Which we talked about.
Yes, which is Cat Lady and
Human Jukebox.
Human
Yeah.
Jukebox.
Yeah. And took those to the Dublin Fringe and a few other places.
And that was probably good because, as Joseph said, they're sort of based on his mom. So to have an outside person coming in and helping to shape them probably helped that too.
And I think Elizabeth's work, you know, working with people on storytelling and, you know, and psychology, you know, she also has a background in psychology, was really useful to that and all things, because it's always, for this process, about sort of going deeper into the psychology, I would say.
Yeah, I happened to train in a Gestalt psychotherapy program for a few years. Does that ring a bell for you?
I'm a polymath.
Okay.
I have barely, almost complete dance therapy masters.
Okay, that's great.
So I went through my internship working with, primarily focusing on children with speech issues and communicative and speech disorders. So, yeah, I kind of approached a chunk of my work through those methods too.
Yeah, and there's just so much opportunity in kind of staying in the moment and being exploratory in a way that's experimental and creative, but also crosses over into just kind of developing the psychology of character development in those moments. So there's so much opportunity there. Yeah.
And then it also, I mean, I think with Train with No Midnight, we go through processes. I mean, I'm somewhat, the lighting designer came up with did a pass of the lights, then I did a pass of refining the lights, then Elizabeth did the pass of the lights. We had developed, I had developed the underscoring for certain sections with the musicians, then Elizabeth came in and kind of, one day I was doing something else, and then she was redirecting all of that, and just, it's kind of like tightening screws and focusing things, and sometimes I want to make bold choices that aren't supported. I think that's good. And then Elizabeth kind of comes in and I would say she's like focusing a lens,
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely uber collaborative.
I mean, that's the final part. And so I think it's kind of like there's the formative, when something's coming into formation, that's a huge part of our work. And then there's also the kind of final, the final part.
Yeah, and I mean, it's so fun just to be able to tag team and to be able to occasionally lean in and have an idea and go for it, and then also just be able to lean out and just be that kind of safety net underneath the...
And I would say, also along with this, I've worked with a number of directors who work on a bunch of other stuff in theater, and a lot of times, directors come with their own aesthetic agenda.
Yes.
And there's a risk of imposing their own agenda onto, mapping that onto the work, and it might have nothing to do with the work.
Right.
Elizabeth's work is always from the inside out, so it's always coming from the kind of center of the work and building out, and I think I think that's really rare in my experience.
I hear you. I mean, there are certain directors in opera I refuse to go see their opera and theater because it just they're all about imposing their concept no matter how it damages the piece. And as a music director and a composer, I've worked with a lot of composers, and I never impose my own sensibility on their piece. It's going into what their style is, what their voice is, and not enough people still get that. So good, congratulations.
Yeah, and we just have, I think, way too much fun. That's the joy in having very talented friends.
Now, have you started playing with the rest of the cast yet, or is it still just you and Joseph and Matthew? Well,
Elizabeth is in New York. We just had, strangely, we started teching the show before really staging the show. So we just had a week of, it was oriented towards video and lighting design. And we, before were partnered in the casting, and now we're going to start diving in with the other performers.
It's gonna be a busy month for sure, and we're so excited about it.
well, I apologize. That's all we have time for. But thank you, Joseph and Elizabeth, for coming and talking with me about your project, Let Me Die. This is Chuck Sachs for Indie Opera Podcast, and I'll be talking with Elizabeth Braden, chorus master for Opera Philadelphia, about her work on the productions of Semele and Love for Three Oranges in O19 Festival, and also in the previous and current seasons. Hello, Elizabeth. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
You're busy in this festival because usually maybe you have like one major opera. You've got two. You've got Semele and The Love for Three Oranges. And are there separate choruses for each?
There are mostly separate choruses, but there are 6 lucky people who are actually in both. Well, maybe perhaps they're unlucky. So there's 40 singers in The Love for Three Oranges and 20 in Semele, and 6 overlap between the two.
Wow. That must set in their mind crazy going between those 2 different styles.
Yes, completely different styles of music, of directors, of show, everything.
And how does that work scheduling-wise for you?
It's busy. We have rehearsals every day, sometimes twice a day, and so it took a lot of planning to figure out how to make it work so that some people could overlap, and so that I could not have to be at 2 places at once too many times.
I've kind of done that because I've done in-rep music theater, where finally I'm doing 4 shows by the end, but you're rehearsing one and then go into the next one, and it's wild.
Yes. It was especially tricky starting because one started on a Friday and one started on a Monday, and so next time I would stagger.
It's like it's like you have to center yourself. Where am I?
Which book do I need today? Yes.
So, let's dive into what exactly does a chorus master do?
That's a good question. I do everything that has to do with the chorus, from hiring singers, through auditions, deciding which singers will be in which opera. Especially now, I need different singers for Handel than for Prokofiev in general, although I have some people, obviously, who can do both in any style. We're a union AGMA chorus, so there's a lot of administrative work that goes along with that. I do all the contracting, so the scheduling, I make the chorus schedule with other colleagues here. I do all the music rehearsals. I'm at all the staging rehearsals to help them with memory. I'll jump in and conduct if the maestro wants to step out for a little bit. I write all the staging in my book so that I can help them when they forget, or when suddenly we get on stage and they say, we only did this once, and I look and say, haha, go left stage, and so yeah, pretty much everything from beginning to end of the season to do with the chorus, I have my hands in.
And what was your path towards becoming a chorus master? Because, generally as a choral conductor, it doesn't include all of these roles you're talking about. They don't need to know about staging, per se, and so many other things.
Yeah, that's true. When I studied choral conducting and studied with Donald Nally, who used to be chorus master here, and he worked at Lyric for a long time, teaches at Northwestern. And so he introduced his students to opera. We came to watch them, and I sang with him in the Spoleto Festival chorus in Spoleto, Italy. So I got a little bit of being on the other side. So that's when I first got a little involved in opera. And because of that, I knew it was a job. I think most people growing up don't even know chorus master's a job, right? Even though it's such a great title.
Right.
Yeah, and so that's how I ended up knowing about it and knowing it was even a possibility. And I just love working with singers and choruses, and so I've done opera and concerts and church, and any time to get people to sing is I love.
After Donald McNally, then you went for a master's at
Westminster Choir College. Yeah,
studying with.
I studied with Joseph Keckler,
who is, for all that you know, he is the choral conductor of our age.
Yeah, I was very lucky to get to study with him before he retired, and then he just died recently.
And then you got the job here because Donald was retiring.
Yes.
And dived into the deep end, in a sense, right?
I did, yes. I had assisted him in Spoleto a few years, but this was really my first full-time opera chorus master gig. Yeah.
And as many of us, not as many of us know, unfortunately, you are one and few between.
Yes.
I know Opera America is working their best to change that. And I was talking before, it's like, if we can think, I can think of 2 female music directors at major opera companies. One of them, she founded it, and the other one is in Chicago.
Yeah, we looked it up. I looked it up one year and tried to look around at other companies, and there were maybe 4 or 5 that I could find across the company that had female chorus masters, and almost none music directors. I know, it's a hard.
So, do you feel that then you have to represent stronger at that point yourself?
Yes and no. Yes, I think for people who tend to think only male or only white male as people to do those jobs, anytime they see someone else do it, it can be eye-opening. On the other hand, I just want to do the best I
Right.
can do as a human being and as an artist.
Right, as opposed to being known as the female
Exactly.
chorus
Yes.
master. You are just chorus master.
Yes.
It's like, yes. So, let's talk. Favorite, besides this season, this would be enough. But you've got two other big operas to work on. Well, one is a concert stage, and then the other is the opera.
Yes.
So you have the Verdi's Requiem, and that's just one night, though. That's a lot of work for one night.
Actually, 2 nights.
Oh, it's 2 nights.
Yeah, a Friday
Great.
evening and then a Sunday matinee. So 2 performances. But yes, it is a lot of work for 2, since we typically do 4 or 5 performances.
How large is that chorus?
That's going to be 100 people, which will be the largest chorus I've had since I've been here. We did Aida, which was probably close to 80, but this will be the biggest.
And where do you pull from to build that up then?
I have our regular roster is probably close to 60. I probably have another 15 or 20 people I rotate in and out of subs as I need. Because it's a smaller gig, it doesn't require as much time. I can draw on local singers who have the vocal chops to do it, but don't necessarily have the time to commit on a regular basis to the opera company. Also, because it is just a concert, it can take some singers who maybe don't want to do opera or aren't as comfortable on the stage, but can sing the repertoire.
Right.
So, but I don't have it fully cast. I'm still. In fact, I was just looking at my roster today, thinking I need some more singers.
And then Madame Butterfly, which is, I mean, at least in the leads and the secondary leads, it's going to be completely Asian. Are they looking to do that with the chorus as well, or are you sticking with?
No, I think we're sticking with our typical, colorblind chorus in that we have who we have, and it will be Caucasian, African American, Asian, Hispanic, all of our regular singers.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That'll be. I mean, I'm looking forward to the Butterfly with a Japanese butterfly. I don't think it's been done, except maybe in the East, possibly. Maybe not even there.
Yeah. No, we're all really looking forward to it. It should be wonderful.
So, what is your working relationship then with Corrado Rivaras, the music director here? What happens in between during those rehearsals and everything?
When we're in a production, we work really closely. We often talk several times before I even start chorus rehearsals to talk about sometimes tempo or specific things he wants. I teach the chorus everything and make sure they're prepared, and then he comes in and starts to work with them, and then after that we really work in partnership. He'll tell me things, this should be softer, can this be clearer, can we change this, or I might say, do you want this to be a different way, and we'll have a conversation, and he trusts me then to go and often tell to the chorus, because we have a good working relationship, and sometimes even though they work closely with him, I can deliver a note very quickly and they can change.
And, I mean, also you've had the great luck here. I mean, you're doing this season is mostly traditional, or, I mean, we'll call it traditional. Prokofiev is lesser done than but you've had a great chance to do a lot of new works here.
Yes.
And get to conduct some of that, right?
Yeah, in 2017, our first festival, O19, I conducted Wake World, which was by David Hertzberg, and that was one of our several world premieres that festival. That was an amazing experience.
I did not get to see it, but we got to hear some of it, and the podcast sat down with Hertzberg and R.B. Schlatter. So, I mean, and also that was a unique experience because it was being done at the Barnes Foundation.
Exactly.
And so it wasn't a traditional setup either for musicians or chorus.
No, it's a giant atrium room, and there was a huge catwalk that stretched the length of it, and most of the action just traveled back and forth. But many times the chorus, and sometimes the principals, there were 2 principals besides the chorus, they would walk in among the audience who could also move. There were seats if you wanted, but most people stood and could move. You can't see my hands, but they're moving in a circle. They moved all around so they could follow the action or follow a singer or come and stand by the orchestra and watch our amazing percussionist play all 1,000 instruments that David managed to get into the opera.
And it's more traditional, but you also got to work on the Magic Flute, the Barry Kosky,
Yes.
Susanna Andrade
magic flute, and that was also different. The chorus was, I mean, most have time they're in those side boxes, and kind of hidden.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a challenge because I think in some places when they do it, they build boxes on the stage.
Yeah.
But because the Academy of Music has the proscenium boxes there, they were in it. And we weren't sure how they would sound, but they actually sounded really good there. And I joked to someone, can we get them in there more often?
It's like when I was watching productions, I suddenly realized that's where the chorus is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just saw it in New York City, part of Lincoln, Mozart,
right.
mostly Mozart, and they had built the boxes.
Yes.
And it was good because of the Coke, so it brought the whole production forward, and probably some of the best sound you've heard for opera in that space. Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah, that's a great production, and for me, it's a great way to solve how do you do so much German dialogue for an audience that doesn't speak German.
Oh, God, yes.
They can just read it quickly, it's funny, you understand the story, and it keeps the show moving.
It made the most sense for me of any magic flute I've ever seen.
Yeah, I thought it was really fantastic.
Now, you also got to do last year A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Yeah, I worked with the children's chorus on that production as well.
Right, so that was a collaborative effort because they had their conductor, their music director.
Yes, at the Philadelphia Boy Choir. Yes, and he helps pick the boys that he knew would be the good singers and good on stage. And in that production, unlike a typical 10 to 14-year-old boy, they often had to stand very still or move in concert together, and so he helped pick the children that he knew would do a good job with that and sing well, and they were fantastic. They wore green wigs, and they did all this, they make beds, and it's also a really fun production. Yeah.
And then the Lucia with the glass harmonica.
Yes, that was beautiful.
And now that probably had some interesting issues for the chorus because of that heavily rigged stage.
Yes, and it was covered with what looked like beautiful snow, but it was actually fabric. So it's very difficult to move on, and they had to do sometimes these very choreographed moves. Yeah, that show had some challenges. It also, this is an interesting story about what sometimes a chorus master does. There was a part where they sing later in the opera, and they were choreographed to sing a circle dance. So they had concentric circles, and they could sing it in time. I have very good performers who are very willing to try things. But as you know, if you walk in a circle, you lose sight of the conductor. And even though it's a strict tempo, just to help them, I and my assistant at the time stood backstage in front of the monitors and clapped really loudly the whole way through so that everybody could stay on tempo. So no one could hear from the house, but it's so there you go, trade secret. Clap really loudly backstage to keep people in tempo.
So you've been here since 2004.
Yeah, I just had my 15th year.
And now recently, I mean, actually just now, you're starting at Penn State.
At University of Pennsylvania.
University of Pennsylvania, sorry. And they created a new choir for you, right?
Yes, they had two choirs before that were both students and community members, and they really wanted to build a choir that would be just for students. So they sort of combined the two into one and brought me on to do it, and we decided to name it the Penn Chorale, so it would be separate from anything before. Actually, we just had our first rehearsal last night, so far about 35 students, and we're going to do an a cappella program of mostly newer choral works in December. So that's very exciting for me to get to do something a little bit different.
And are you teaching other courses at the school, or is it just...
It's just the one choir for this year, until we see how things go.
I think probably that's enough with this festival going on.
Even last night I had the first rehearsal and then ran back to attend the 90 minutes of a Semele rehearsal when it was done. Took a cab across town from Penn to Center City, and luckily I have a very good assistant chorus master, Robert Whalen, and he covers in my absence when I'm not there and assists when we do have things going on, 2 rehearsals going on at once.
And now when you're doing your rehearsals, you have accompanist with you. You're not...
Yes. I do play a little, not nearly as well as any of the pianists we have, but yes, I prefer to conduct the rehearsals. I know some chorus masters lead from the piano quite effectively, but for me it's easier to just conduct and have a wonderful pianist.
So what else are you doing besides, I mean, do you have other hobbies besides this? What do you do for fun?
Well, I have a 9-year-old son, so recently we've been playing a lot of a Star Wars game on Xbox, which he loves. And we do a lot of family things, my wife and I and my son. So when we have time away from the opera, which doesn't happen until after the festival, we like to go bowling and do fun things outside. I like to read books, although I haven't read many lately because we're in rehearsal all the time. I'm sure you understand.
I do.
Everybody.
I'm a voracious reader, and it's partially what I used to before I go to sleep. No matter what, I'll read for like 30 minutes and just clear the rest of the world out.
I like crossword puzzles too, and I've discovered you could download and subscribe to the New York Times crossword. So I try to do Monday through Thursday. After that, I'm pretty much done. Friday and Saturday.
Right. But it's good. It's good your mind working a different way.
Yeah.
Even though it's still the puzzle.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of puzzle.
Yes, I love that. It kind of keeps your brain active, but it's completely separate from music, which is nice.
Well, this has been great, and I look forward to hearing your work in the whole festival and going forward. And thank you for talking with me.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this special edition of Opera Fix. If you missed it, Barry Banks, who is also performing as part of O19 Festival in The Love for Three Oranges, was featured on episode 65. You can find that as www.indieopera.com. And please do check out our YouTube channel. Thank you. This has been Chuck Sachs.